And when I started meditating, I like to say when we add prayer and meditation, we create spiritual dynamite.
Wow. Okay, good.
And for me, that combination, it really changed my life.
Shea,
Yeah.
nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too.
I'm really grateful to you for for being here. And we met before, but this is probably the first time we're really having a conversation.
That's true. When we met before, there were many other people. There was a meeting going on. We got to say hello, but not have, any type of true conversation.
Right.
So I welcome this.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, me too. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your family, your background.
Sure.
Then tell it to me like I'm 5 years old. So.
It's good to have the spirit of the child within you. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm good at.
So I grew up in New Jersey. I'm the fifth child of 5. So literally, I've been called the baby my whole life. Clearly, I'm no longer a baby, but my siblings lovingly introduced me as the baby of the family. And
did you get like all the love? Did you get most of the love?
Well, it's interesting. So a lot of love was poured on to me. And even though they introduced me as the baby, in some ways, I'm kind of like the oldest in the family in terms of responsibility. Although the oldest does carry matriarchal energy. I do not carry that energy, I don't believe.
Oh, interesting. So share a little bit more how that happened.
Sure. So I don't believe I was planned. In fact, I know I wasn't planned. I'm 9 years younger than the next sibling. And who was the only boy. And
so there's 5 of you?
Yes, there's 5 of us.
Okay,
well, there were 5 of us. Some of them are no longer alive.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you were a family of 5 children, 1 boy, 4 girls.
Yes.
And the boy was the one just above you, but 9 years gap.
That's correct. 9 years gap. My big brother.
Okay.
So and mother and father. And we lived in New Jersey. Wonderful family environment. We came from a big family. My mother had 3 siblings. My father had several siblings. We had lots of extended family. Most of the aunts and uncles had multiple children. So it was a big family on both sides.
All in Jersey?
Mostly, yeah.
So would you come for family reunion? Like how?
So before I came along, there were a lot of family events. People, I came along and everything
Something
changed.
really happened when you came along.
No, I'm in the same generation as my siblings. I'm a baby boomer, but I'm at the other end. And family dynamics just started to change at that time. We were in the 60s now. So family dynamics started to change. But before I came along, pretty much every month, every couple of weeks, they would go to, have you ever heard of Bear Mountain?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they would go to Bear Mountain, Lake Sebago, picnics, a lot of family events on both sides. Again, both sides of the family. My mother originates from Richmond, Virginia. So there is still family in Richmond, Virginia. And my father came from South Carolina. And I'm not aware of any family in South Carolina. Doesn't mean they're not there. I just am not aware.
Right.
So by the time I came along, we were starting to grow in terms of economically. My father owned his own store, a repair shop of TV and electronics. And my mother worked. She was mostly a stay-at-home mom, but she did some work as well outside the house. And the big thing that happened is when I was 5.5, my father passed away. And so that's in part why some of the family dynamics changed.
Right.
And my siblings were so much older. At that point, it was just my mom. And so I ended up spending more time with my mother's family than my father's family, although I did get to know them.
I see. Yeah. So were your siblings still in the house?
So at the time that my father passed away, my oldest sister was about to get married.
Wow.
And my second oldest sister was soon to be married after that.
Right.
And so they were either out of the house or on their way out of the house. So really, probably after 2 years after my father passed away, it was my mother, my brother, and I. And we're very close, my entire family, but they again had moved out of the house. And since that my brother and I, there was so much of a gap, I almost kind of grew up like an only child, not quite, but almost. I adored my siblings, and as the youngest child, I wanted to do everything that they did. So I kind of progressed quickly.
Quickly, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I even remember one of my favorite books was Green Eggs and Ham. Do you remember that book?
Yeah, yeah.
And in it, well, to everybody else, it looked like scribble. To me, I was writing in script because I was writing like my siblings wrote.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you looked up to your siblings.
Very
you
much.
received love from them. And presumably you were far enough in age so they weren't going to tease you at all because you were too many years apart.
Well, I don't know about that.
They poke fun a little bit.
Well, my brother, he didn't have another boy. So
that's right.
And he wanted a brother. And my mother promised him a brother. So apparently when I was born, my sisters were clapping and my brother was crying. So, but the good thing is we were close. His name is Eddie. Well, was Eddie. He's no longer alive.
I see.
And they tried to teach me to say Brother Eddie, and I used to call him Bubba D.
Bubba D.
So
that's got a ring to it.
So for my entire life, he was my Bubba D. My Bubba D.
And only you called him Bubba D.
I'm the only one. So, but I had to learn how to do things he could do. So I had to learn how to catch a baseball because if I didn't, I was going to get hit with a baseball.
So with a mitt or a bare hand?
No, with a mitt. Okay. He did give me a mitt.
So you used to play boy games together?
Yeah, I learned how to catch a football. I learned, how to dribble. He was into sports, so I became a big sports fan. Well, I had to protect myself also.
So you mentioned that you, the youngest of 5, but you also became, in some sense, I'm guessing this is a story connected to how your faith was strengthened, or the where your faith came from, and also your sense of perhaps leadership or influence for the family as well.
Yeah, I believe so, and that's why I mentioned it. At a very young age, we were introduced to church. Church was very important to my family.
Yeah,
we were Baptist. I'm sure I went probably the day after I got home. So, church wasn't separate. A lot of people that we knew belonged to the same church. We didn't just go on Sunday. It was infused into our lives. Choir practice, other types of things during the week, and socially. In many African-American homes, there's a Bible that's open to the 23rd Psalm. That was the case in our household. Prayer was important. And so
it's really part of the lifestyle. It's part of the community. Everything's connected.
Very much.
Do you think that, just a sort of side point, because I want to follow your story there, but comparing that to how a lot of people think of church today, do you think it's changed? Do you think it's predominantly different in the Black community versus other faiths? There's a lot of people that I believe consider church, it's like a time and place on the weekend, not as much connected to the way of life in the family throughout the week. Has that changed?
I think it has changed. I think it's changed all over the world. I mean, at least in the U.S. In the U.S., many, many years ago, pretty much between 10 a.m. and let's say 1 p.m., almost everybody was going to some type of church or religious ceremony. That's not the case now. In fact, when I was a kid, there were no sports on Sunday. Some of the stores that were open, you couldn't. Well, I grew up in New Jersey, and there was what they call the blue laws.
They're still in effect.
They still exist in Bergen County.
Yeah.
Right? Couldn't purchase clothing. You couldn't purchase toys. You couldn't purchase appliances. But
not comforts or convenience, but necessities.
Yes. So, you asked me about, do I think church has changed or religion has changed or how people view it? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess my life is nothing of a reference point that I can really base those kinds of, like, I remember the first time, I guess my family was largely Catholic and Church of England. And I do remember walking in with probably my American grandmother into a Catholic mass at least a couple times. and thinking, what on earth is this? Like it was like it's, you know, I was just a child, little child. So church was not a part of my upbringing, apart from my mom's initial, you know, years when I was with her as a baby in the Unification Church. But then I was raised by my grandparents in Europe, and my father in Europe. And if anything, I was kind of raised more in a sort of a humanistic, kind of somewhat cynical against religion, organized religion atmosphere. And that, in some sense, in my family side, was also a fighting contrast against where they saw my mother going. So raised Catholic, but she was looking for answers that the Catholic Church were not providing. So she went deeper in her quest and came upon the Unification faith, which totally made sense to her. But that was scary to them. So that kind of accentuated their protectionism around me and sort of organized religion. And so I have no reference point of my own, but I can see, and I've also been a wanderer. Like I've never been in one place for long enough to see how things change over time in any given place, quite honestly. But my sense of things is that you know, probably from the 50s in America. What I understand, the mid-50s was the peak of church attendance on record in America. And it started to wane. It started, you know, God and church started to become popular topics to attack, I think, in popular culture. And so I've seen that, and that definitely affected my generation and the millennials behind me, I think. But my son tells me that on TikTok these days, the topic of God and spirituality, even among the Gen Zs, is becoming they're intrigued by it, although they're not necessarily looking for particular Bible quotes to buttress their faith. They have questions, and they have sort of an antenna that may be a little bit more open and unscathed with all of the antagonisms that popular culture has placed on the church over the last 5 decades, perhaps. That's his perspective. But yeah, I sense that it's changed, but I couldn't experience it myself as perhaps you could see it. Yeah.
Yes. You know, over time, I'll say my relationship with God has changed. So as a young person, very young, I went to church as a baby.
Yeah.
Then I ended up going to, you know, the school for the youth before church. And then we would then go sit with the rest of the adults for the rest of church.
Was that Sunday school?
Sunday school.
That's called
yes.
Sunday school.
And learned wonderful songs. In fact, I recently had to think about these things because I had to write a credo for my ministry. And I remember songs like, and you may or may not know these songs, but Jesus loves me. Yes, I know.
Yes.
For the Bible tells me so.
Tells me so.
Right. And so I was remembering these songs, and I thought to myself, it's so interesting, even though the songs I learned as a kid were about Jesus.
Yeah.
As opposed to mentioning God or whatever other word feels comfortable for your spirit.
Right.
You know, universal intelligence. I saw Jesus as like a big brother. I didn't really see Jesus as an intercessory to God.
Right.
You know, I didn't feel like I had to go through Jesus to have a relationship with God. And I actually started having a relationship with God. I used to pray. I call myself I was a closet prayer as a kid. People didn't know I was praying.
Was that on purpose?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I'm very private. So I'm a Scorpio, and Scorpios like to be private. So that was just part of who I am.
Your character,
to be quiet.
Right?
Yeah. It wasn't.
You weren't making a thing of it.
No, I wasn't hiding. It's just I'm also I would call myself an introvert. So this was the thing I did when I was alone.
Right.
And I prayed for years. In fact, a lot of friends didn't know that as an adult, I would pray. There was a church in Newark, New Jersey that I would go to, and I would part of a prayer group.
Which church is that?
Which is oh my goodness, New Hope Baptist Church.
Right.
And they had what was called a prayer band. That's what they used to call it, which is basically a prayer group. And I would go every Wednesday, and I would pray with these individuals. I wasn't part of the church, and at that time, I was growing in a different spiritual way, but I still enjoyed praying with those individuals. And yeah, we would pray for everything: individuals, the world, the church, youth, you name it. We were praying for it.
So you're praying together? You're praying by yourself?
Oh no, together.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then you would write names of individuals or situations that you wanted prayed on, maybe healing for someone.
Yeah.
And we would put them in a little box, and at the end you would pick out several of them, and that's who you would pray for the next week.
That's also, we're doing something similar like that. Prayer and music. I feel like you just do a whole series of podcasts on prayer, music. And when you're telling me about the songs, we really got to get our songs together. It's like you're probably learning more through the song, repeating the song, singing the song, right? So tell me a little bit about that, how you might compare learning the songs and singing the songs and praying versus listening to the, stories or the lectures.
Well, I think it depends on where you are. As a child, learning songs are great because you can repeat them over and over again, right? And as you're repeating things over and over again, they have a way of moving into your consciousness, your body.
Right.
And you start to live from those things, whether you recognize it or not.
Right.
At least that's what I believe.
I believe, yeah.
And then as an adult, I think it's also important as an adult, what songs are we listening to?
That's right.
Are they putting positive imagery in our minds and our thoughts?
Right.
What are we saying?
Right.
What are we believing?
Right.
What are we conscious of saying?
Right.
I think all of those things are important. And I think they're connected to our relationship with, I'll say, spirituality, since you mentioned that word earlier.
Right. That's I can work with that.
Yeah.
So you were really raised in the church as part of your family, Baptist church, part of your family, part of your community. And you're describing yourself becoming, you said, a closet prayer person.
Closet prayer.
But that could just be because of your character, but not.
Oh yeah.
But you're a prayer lady. And from a young age,
I am a prayer
warrior,
prayer lover, prayer warrior,
prayer queen,
power prayer. You call it anything you want to call it. I am that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, prayer. So I really think prayer shifts. Really, it's about shifting us, right? Well, I believe it's about shifting us and opening up us to more of who we are and more of, what God is in our lives, not just outside of us, within us. It helps to not have separation between you and me. Right. Helps me to see you more just like I am, even though, there may be some things that we differ in, but innately we're the same. We kind of all want the same, I think, at a base level. So when you start to see that and realize that, then more love comes about, and peace is important to you in the world. And I think that's one of the pathways to peace.
Yeah. So do you find sometimes you struggle with certain people? And then you pray for
I was going to say, of course.
This episode of the Peace Starts With Me podcast is brought to you by our merch store. Check it out at peacestartswithme.com/collections. We have apparel and accessories for the whole family, including backpacks, pins, aprons, shirts, baby onesies and bibs, and more. Show your support and go to peacestartswithme.com/collections.
So, I know you want to get to a certain point in my life, but I'm a little curious. We've been talking about me. Tell me a little bit about your family. You mentioned growing up in Europe and...
Oh, I grew up all over the place.
Yeah?
I'm still picking up pieces. I used to tell people where I'm from, and then I'd see their eyes glaze over. When they say, so where are you from? And I say, well, I was born here, went there. I just say, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. That's where I was born, not raised.
Really?
Yep.
So I do detect a slight accent.
Yep, I get that a lot. I went to school in England. So I'm basically, I was raised in 3 countries. formative years perhaps in London. And but I lived in all manner of different kinds of situations. I was raised by my father for the most part. And yeah, we left the States in 1980. I was 7 years old. And then we went to England. The summers were in Italy, where his parents lived and retired to.
So you, in your formative years, what do you think is the experience that had the biggest impact on you and who you've become?
I don't know why I'm thinking of a particular time. This is not necessarily the biggest impact, but I'm a believer in paying attention to what comes up. So what just came up when you said that was, I was probably 11 or so. I think I was living in Fulham, London, and I was on my way to play tennis, probably at the time, probably just against the wall in one of the local courts, you know, when just playing around myself. And on the way back from playing, I was approached by two thugs who wanted to take my bag. I could kind of tell as they were coming towards me. And they tried to take my stuff. So we got into a fight. And I remember spinning around. They were both a lot bigger than me. And I was used to this kind of aggressive behavior. Somehow I met a lot of people. One of the most common things I remember hearing when I got to London was, "Oi, what are you looking at?" You know, it's like if you're just looking at someone, they'd say, "What?" You know, this kind of like they're trying to start a fight. I don't know. I remember that kind of energy a lot of the time. And when I was getting basically mugged by these two guys trying to take my stuff, and I didn't let them take it. I remember holding on really tight, and we ended up spinning around until ultimately they just gave up. But I remember thinking, for some reason at that moment, like, you know, I've had enough of this. I want to go back to America. I remember thinking that. And it's an interesting thought that occurs because there's some evidence from stories that my grandfather told me when I was as young as like 3.5, something like this. I used to ask my family, like, why aren't we praying? Let's pray before we eat. And they weren't leading in prayer before the meal. And because of the story of what my mother was going through, and like I mentioned, they were trying to cut down on any relationship between Demian and God, or Demian and organized God at least. So I think they God bless them, but they felt threatened by that kind of talk. So they used to kind of shut that down. God doesn't exist. You know, like this kind of thing was going on in my earliest youth.
Yes. And
one of them told me the story is one time this was going on, and I told them, look, if you're not nice to me, I'm going to go back to my mom. So why I'm saying this is because there's some connection in my life between America, between America's purpose, between America and my life, and between America and God that means something to me, I think. And it was the only country I'd ever really cried for. Because even when you said, if you say, where are you from in America? I was like, by age 7, I'd lived in 7 different states, you know. So it wasn't even about any particular group of friends or teachers or community. I couldn't hold on to any kind of fabric for long enough to say, that's my color, that's my people, that's my background. I had to really be adaptable and flexible. But in that constant change, I think there was also a constant longing. And in more adult years, when I started to redevelop my relationship with God, I recognized that God was there all along. God was there in the songs I was singing to myself on the way to school. God was there when I was struggling. And I remember those moments like, you know, when you want to slam the door and whatever's going on, you want to slam the door to the world and walk down and they'll miss me when I'm gone. You know, those kind of moments.
Yeah.
I would hear a voice speaking to me and comforting me and letting me know that, you know, whether you choose to go 10 steps down that road or 10 miles down that road, it's just going to get more lonely and darker. So just don't worry about it. I hear this kind of counsel coming to me, even when perhaps my own family members couldn't give that to me, or there was no church that could give that to me, no community, and no siblings. I mean, Shea, I actually do have like 3 siblings, none of which I grew up with.
Oh, wow.
None of which grew up with either one of themselves. So I'm kind of like a single child, single parent. My dad and I like brothers in many respects. I want to give props to my dad, who really loved me and invested a lot in me, but he was so young. So there was nothing of stability that really I had to hold on to. And so I think in that constant change, there was that constant longing, and come to find that God was there all along.
You know, it's so interesting when you were talking about, you know, the guys finally ran away because they didn't get you. You spun around enough that you were slick enough that they couldn't actually get you.
Yeah.
But I thought what you were going to say is, at that moment, I thought, never again. This is not going to happen again. So I was really surprised when you said, I want to go back to the U.S. So I'm wondering, it almost sounds like the U.S. was a place of strength. Or at least you might have recognized that as a place of strength, or where you could ground into your strength.
Yeah. It was something of strength. There was something of pride. And it wasn't anything projected or imprinted on me like, you know, like the patriotic flag wrapped around in something I learned at school about America or something like this. It was something in the DNA of it, definitely. Yeah, no, it wasn't about them when I was getting mugged. It wasn't about, you know, it was more about, I think, me finding my, you say strength? Yeah. Me finding my foundation and my sense of identity. So it's something to do with that.
Well, and you brought it back to your connection with God, and God always being there.
Yeah.
Right? As that strength in you, around you, outside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Omnipresent.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
You know, so the defining moment for me as a child, which is why I mentioned my dad passing away. When that happened, I saw that all my siblings and my mother was crying. And I was a little kid. I wasn't crying. I didn't know why I started crying, because they were crying.
You're like 5.5, you said. You're around 5.5?
5.5, yeah. So, well, almost 6.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'll take care of them. Don't worry, Dad, I'll take care of them. So that's kind of my entryway into, I'm going back to answer your question from before. That was my entryway into, in some ways, becoming like the oldest, because if I didn't come into the world as a caregiver, I became a caregiver.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know, and that morphed over time into just, you know, a young person trying to give love to their family, to being more active when, you know, someone needed some type of assistance. And then people started to look towards me because I already claimed it.
Oh, so you saw your basically your adult family, your siblings, in need.
Well, like any child, right? You don't want the people you love to feel bad or cry or be upset. So you want to take care of them. Right? I think that's probably very common.
I get the sense, you know, not just a product of circumstance. Not just...
Say more. I'm not sure.
You mentioned, you know, unplanned. I guess you're saying that your siblings were all planned?
Well, I think some of them.
Yeah, what I meant by the comment was just like, it seems like while you may have responded naturally to the circumstance, I get the feeling you're a spirit that was, you know, prepared for that role.
Oh, I'm well, you noticed I said if I didn't come into the world that way. I'm not sure, but it feels very much like who I am. So, yeah. However, you can have with any attributes, any gifts, right? You can embrace them, and having self-awareness, if you are utilizing them in harmony with who you are and where you're going, as opposed to, right? Sometimes we'll take a gift and we won't use it at all. And then there's sometimes we'll take a gift and we'll take it to the max so much so that it's not helpful for us or helpful for anybody else, right? So, kind of balance, harmony is very important.
And so we can have talents, but it seems like there's circumstances that, and you asked me the question, what was a defining moment? So it's like the circumstances that trigger those latent talents into action.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting, right? What's free will versus the things that are presented in our lives for us to really become more of who we are. And then are we willing to accept those things or not, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned leadership, right? We can look at that moment that I talked about almost like becoming a leader. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that, but maybe. What is interesting, and I recognize it more now, and I'm curious, it may be the same with you. I'm curious to know that at a very young age, I was always the leader. I didn't think I was the leader, right? Like in sports, I was always picked as the captain. In church, when there was a recital or some type of play, if someone got sick, my family got called for me to learn the part really quickly because I could memorize, and then I'd step up and do it. Right? I was always put into these roles that were kind of in front.
Yeah.
But remember, I said I'm an introvert. So not that I was scared. It's like, okay, I'll do this, but I didn't think of it in terms of leadership. And as I got older, I can see where I would sit in the back of the room, very good at, hey, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to sit in the back of the room. I'm just going to get some stuff. And next thing I know, I'm leading the thing. Like, wait a minute, I was sitting in the back of the room.
Well, to that point, and I'll be quick, when I was coming back into a more direct relationship with God, one of the ingredients for me that seemed to matter is that I mattered and that I too was needed. And I think, there can be an idea of God, all omnipresent, almighty, all there, all doesn't even need us. So everything's so darn done and finished and perfect. And yet when you look at humanity, there's so much work to be done.
Yeah.
That can't be anything than a full longing in God's heart too. And so that we can have a positive impact on one another means a lot for one another and all those ripple effects. And it also means a lot for God, in my opinion, because it's like, so that was one of the ingredients I felt that made sense of my life too, and even made sense of some of the suffering and the challenges that didn't make sense when I was a kid. Not just simply to say it made me who I am today, because you can say that, but it's when it's your own story, there's a lot of detail in that expression.
Well, my trajectory was very different than where I am now. Very, very different. Growing up, I knew that I did want to live a little differently than when I was very young. I mentioned how my family started to progress economically. Not that we were, poor and down and out, but my parents didn't go to college.
Right.
I knew very young that I wanted to go to college, and my family, of course, wanted me to go to college. And after college, I knew I was going to be a professional. I'm very driven. I've always been driven.
Were you studying for ministry, or were
No.
you were
No.
you were studying to be able to make some money?
Exactly. I was a math major. I chuckle because that was the furthest thing. So even though I was a prayer, I was a closet prayer.
Yeah. You kept that going.
It was almost like I didn't realize I was a closet prayer, right?
Okay.
So it was just something I did.
You didn't realize it was different from anyone else.
Well, I mean, it was like reading a book to me, right? It was just something I did. It was just natural. So I was a math major. I was
So which high school did you graduate, and then which college you go to?
Oh, so I graduated from Hackensack High School and I went to Cornell University.
Ooh.
And so, which was very different than my family.
Right.
I was the first to go to an Ivy League school. And I very much, as a young child, wanted to go to an Ivy League school. I just wanted to go to a different one until I got into high school and I decided I wanted to go to Cornell.
Okay.
And I won't say the other one.
Okay.
But anyway, have the Ivy Leaguers
is
wondering.
Is that a loyalty? Oh, okay, have them wonder.
So, and anyway, I became a math major. I became an actuary.
Wow.
I don't know if you've heard of actuaries. So and actuaries like to pretend we're everything. We like to pretend we're lawyers. We like to pretend we're economists. We like to pretend we're attorney. We're accountants. So anyway, and in corporate America, I was rising up the ladder. I ran a department, became vice president.
You were working in New York at that time? Where?
I worked in New York and then in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I was marketing, bringing in clients. That's what I was going to do. And
you were still praying.
Oh, yeah. But that's just something I did.
That's still you, right?
So, and nobody at work knew I was praying.
Right.
And I felt inspired to start meditating. Mm. And when I started meditating, I like to say when we add prayer and meditation, we create spiritual dynamite.
Wow. Okay, good.
And for me, that combination, it really changed my life. Or at least, it did. I started to, I'm going to say, think differently. I started to see some of the things occurring in the thinking within at least the corporate arena that I was in was not necessarily for me healthy. For example, I had no work-life balance.
Okay.
If our life is a pie,
right,
about 90% was work.
In that world.
In my world.
In your world. But
in that world.
And in the world of those who you were mingling with. That was the scenario.
Exactly. And so, and then I was still involved in a lot of things. I was involved in different organizations because service has always been natural in my heart and natural. And so I don't know, maybe service was 4%. My family, I've already mentioned my family, so they're important.
Yep.
They were maybe 5%.
Wow.
And then there was like this little slither for me.
Wow.
And the combination of the prayer with the meditation helped me it opened my heart in ways that, I don't really have the words, but it got me to start seeing things through a different lens, kind of behind the eyes, right? Yep. So now I'm tapping into what I believe is the image and likeness of God.
Yeah.
And so my desire started to change. And so I actually left corporate America and I started consulting. And
just quite naturally.
It was natural to consult.
Well, quite sort of that transition felt quite natural. Or
it
wasn't a walk out, I'm done.
Oh, no. I prepared. I prepared to leave.
So, okay, but we jumped over something there. Like,
okay.
You're praying. Mm-hmm. And then this dynamite combo you mentioned where meditation comes in. So how did that happen? And what just happened there?
Well, I guess I don't really know in terms of the actual process, but I think before, right, the praying, I'll say it this way. Praying is almost like talking to God. Mm-hmm. And even though I felt like there was a relationship, my getting quiet, what now I call going within, I became a listener.
Right.
And so now, bingo, ding, 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 right?
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So,
at its simplest form, if I was seeing it the same way, and there's countless ways to pray and countless ways to meditate. Mm-hmm. But I would boil it down to the same. I would have the same expression if you boiled it down to its simplest. As one is you're expressing, and the other one you're receiving.
Yeah. And so, and I started receiving a lot, right? And receiving even relationship to other people
Right.
in a way that was different than before.
Right. And not only in your prayer moment, but in relationship, your eyes are opening
Totally.
deeper, right?
Yeah. And so now
Discernment.
discernment, exactly, which is what I would call wisdom.
Right. Right.
And so now in conversations, I can now hear beyond the words that
Right.
someone's talking about.
Right.
I can now move beyond their emotions, right? I'm not
Right.
just seeing, oh, they're angry. I'm seeing, oh, they're angry because they're hurt.
Right.
Not because someone told me,
Right.
but because I'm more open. My heart's more open.
Right.
My mind is not just my brain anymore.
Right.
Right. And so now I'm having a different relationship with the world. I'm having a different relationship to sports, things I loved. Everything, it's almost like Technicolor got
Right.
brighter.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything that was there before is there in a new dimension.
Yeah, in a new way.
Mm.
And so from that, I decided to leave corporate America. And I didn't, you're right, I didn't just walk out. I prepared to leave. I then consulted, and I consulted for many years.
This episode of the Peace Starts With Me podcast is brought to you by our merch store. Check it out at peacestartswithme.com/collections. We have apparel and accessories for the whole family, including backpacks, pins, aprons, shirts, baby onesies and bibs, and more. Show your support and go to peacestartswithme.com/collections.
And then I started to get a little confused because I could feel this, I'm going to say this pull towards ministry. And I was like, I'm not, that's not for me. And then when I thought it was for me, I saw other people who were like, I want to do this. But then I didn't see them living their life to reflect the things they talked about.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want to do that.
Wow.
Now, look, so the way I say it is we all have our stuff. I got my stuff too.
Yeah.
Right. And over time, I'm more self-aware. I try to clean up where I can, try to not misstep. I'll say it that way, misstep.
Yeah.
But I make mistakes too. But being aware of them and kind of being willing to look at where it's coming from.
Right.
And having the strength to know that I can do that because I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me.
Right.
And those things came about really because of wanting a bigger relationship with not just what's outside of me, but what's inside of me. Right. So it's almost like a walk in knowing me.
Right. And it's not an outside pressure or bar that you're trying to reach or something like this, but really it's a natural outcoming of your own desire. And then, then you're looking for a way. And how does that work in terms of ministry when the examples that you've seen set don't necessarily,
Yeah.
Is that what I hear you say?
Yeah. I mean, there were definitely examples of people that I
that
saw,
you admired.
Yeah. But there were people who I thought were more like me, or I'll say it this way.
Right.
I felt like I was, I'll say a spiritual baby.
Okay.
Or a toddler.
Yeah.
And then I'd see people who were what I thought were much more advanced than me.
Yeah.
Expressing a similar desire, even though I hadn't actually expressed it.
Right.
And they didn't. Now, this is my own judgment.
Okay.
I'm not saying they weren't living
Yeah.
that way. I wasn't perceiving it that way.
Okay.
And the result for me was I don't want to, if I'm gonna take this walk. Actually, earlier today I was thinking about Jesus riding the donkey on Palm Sunday. So I was like, if I ride the donkey, if I take the walk, I don't want to just walk. I want to walk the talk. And I didn't know if I could do that. So I kept saying no. And
wow. This is no to you?
Well, no to...
It wasn't like people were coming at you.
Oh, no.
Right.
No. It's just I was saying no. Like, I just think I want to do that because I get excited and it feels good.
I see.
And then the thing is, it wouldn't let me go.
Interesting.
Right? It wouldn't let me go. So
it was pulling you.
Yeah. So eventually I said yes. And like many things, when we say yes to what we're really being called to, whatever that call is. And the train took off. I was holding on to the back of the caboose and my feet are flapping and I'm smiling because I'm doing what I'm supposed to really be doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you are, where are you at now?
So I'm a licensed minister with an organization called Unity. Unity's been around since the mid to late 1800s, and we are a spiritual practice. We're a movement. We call ourselves a movement.
Mm-hmm.
I will be actually ordained this summer. I can do everything that one can do when they're ordained, but when you haven't quite finished all of your schoolwork,
Right.
they license you. So
you're licensed, and then this summer you will be ordained.
I'll be ordained, and so I'm very excited about
Congratulations. And that speaks differently to each kind of system, each walk of faith, each community. So what does that mean in the Unity community?
So like I said, there's not that much difference between being ordained and being licensed. However, as a licensed minister, I had to just go under a slightly different process.
Right.
Say it that way.
Right.
But I am the minister of a Unity Center, Unity Church in New Jersey, and I've been so for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that will continue.
That will continue.
Now you're ordained in that role.
I'll be ordained in that role, which means basically, because they supported me, I'll be there with them at least another year, but I don't have any plans to leave. We have a wonderful relationship. We're starting to grow more.
Right. So if we want to find you, where do we go?
So you can find me at it's Unity of Sussex County, and we're in Lafayette, New Jersey. Our website, is unityofsussex.org. Right now, we actually have a splash page up because we're redoing our website.
Okay. I know what a splash page is. That's
okay.
Good. So from there we can find you, and then your services. And you do services on Sundays?
We have services on Sunday at 11 a.m. They're approximately an hour. Then we have fellowship. We're online on Facebook. We live stream on Facebook. People can come in person or watch online. We do other things during the week. We also started a meditation in February that starts before the service at 10 o'clock from 10 to 10:30. And one can come in person or be on Zoom for that meditation.
Oh, wow.
Meditation's important in Unity.
Yeah, so I was going to ask
you. Prayer and meditation are both important.
I was going to ask you real quick, we're closing up on time here, but so how important, so you mentioned an hour. Is that how it's always been, or is that sort of more of a current trend?
No, well, I've been in Unity myself since 2004, and it's about an hour and 15 minutes. Usually. Unless it's a special thing going.
And is music a part of the service?
Oh, very much. And for me, music is very important. You mentioned music before.
Yeah.
To me, the music helps to create the environment. Yeah. I'll say the frequency.
Yeah.
And I always like the music to tie into the message that I'm delivering that day. I think music is extremely important. And bringing in music, I'll say, of old, as well as music of new.
Okay, great.
We do meditate in service.
Mm-hmm.
We get a little quiet. And of course, we pray. But we've been talking about me. And now I know you just got back from Asia.
Yep.
So what were you doing there? What are you doing here? You're back.
I'm back. Yeah.
Back and bigger and better and badder than ever.
Well, there's so Mother Moon sent me to Asia, and I bring my family to Asia. We're not going to leave them behind. Family Federation for World Peace. But we have a habit of sending men off to lead with their families behind. It's not much easier dragging your family around. Mm-hmm. Asia was almost 3 years, and so it was we had all of Asia divided into two, so there was two of us taking care of each half. I think I had 3.4 billion people on my side, and this included everything from Mongolia down to Indochina. I didn't even, Yumiko and I, my wife Yumiko, we didn't even get to see all the nations that we were.
And you said your family went with you.
My family went with me. We chose
beautiful.
Bangkok as the main hub because of travel was easier, and it was developed enough to kind of bring your family and move in. But that was home until just last year when Mother Moon sent me back to America with a lot of other changes. So in a nutshell, we've been going for about 63 years, and there's a lot that's amazing in that history.
Mm-hmm.
But Mother is this movement is kind of a change maker movement, and Mother herself is like a change maker within the movement, and she's calling on us all to be a spirit and truth-led movement. And I think that what I can say is that there's a lot of there has been a tendency perhaps over recent decades where we're trying to like teach people into the kingdom or something like this. But she's been real clear. It's like, she's taking us back into an environment where definitely prayer and meditation be a source of our whatever great thinking and whatever strategies and whatever developments we want to do. It has to be rooted in that. So it's like whatever the testimony of someone's story is going to be, it should probably start in that realm of where it was in prayer and meditation. And so there's a lot that's shifting. So you ask us about what is going on in our church or what's going on in our services. We're fast moving and changing now to change again. And that's one of the reasons that, leadership's been moved around as well. So I'm here Monday through Friday, and then Friday through Sunday night, I'm in the community. Just got back from Los Angeles. I was in, where was I before that? LA. I was in DC. Tomorrow I'm flying to Bay Area, and then it'll be Dallas, Chicago, and then New Jersey, and then Korea, and then back to Indiana, Atlanta. And so we're I'm in a position which puts me to oversee a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not in the room with the members every day,
Mm-hmm.
But these trips to the communities out in the field allow me to, it's kind of like my vacation days. So I can spend time, with the family and really pray together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pray together and listen to what God's telling us today.
Yeah.
And without thinking it's got to go through committee or some 6-month survey, peer review, something or else. It's like we can listen to God and we can be guided by God and we can make the changes we need to make today.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about the youth. And we talk a lot, it's easy to talk about the youth and then keep them over there in the corner like a pretty vase or something. But it's like, we really want to, or it's like the analogy of the dad with the car in the garage, who's jangling the keys in front of his son. Says, someday, son.
Well, we want to make sure we empower our youth.
But we want to give them the keys and let them take it for a ride and really empower them for real. And it's a partnership. So we're all about family. We're definitely strong on tradition, but we also need to be able to take notice of when, certain traditions might have been needed to protect an era that we're not in anymore. And so there's a lot there. I won't go into any more of it now, but at any other time. But we're trying to step up our game with music and with prayer, and we've been opening like prayer halls in the churches, not just in the sanctuary, but dedicated prayer rooms.
Yes.
With candles lit. Basically like 24/7. Anybody can go there and pray and holler or meditate, and so we've been having a lot of deep experiences with that. People are saying, it's like, wait, 30 years, like it's been 30 years or something like that. People be saying like, I've had this question or I've been struggling with this issue. And as pastors, we can counsel, we can guide, we can comfort. But I think the quickest route, the most central ministry's got to be prayer.
Well, it sounds like prayer, even the way people are praying,
is changing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it's changing, right?
Yeah.
Not that I very much believe one can be in supplication.
Yeah.
I think the Bible says that. And I've seen some people who that is their way of praying, and mountains are being moved. Like they have so much faith. They can pray from that place. Supplication prayer is the asking. right? And we can ask from a place of, I'll call dominion, right? Again, I'm going to go back to that oneness. There's no separation. We can ask knowing, right? This is the knowing that it probably has already occurred, or at least it will occur if it hasn't already occurred. It's me getting into the place where I can be receptive. I can be in connection with it. But then there's this prayer of gratitude, right? Just simply gratitude or praise. When we raise and praise, right? We, in fact, the Bible, and so I'm talking about the Bible, but many sacred texts, many religious and or spiritual practices have these things of praise and thanksgiving, praise and gratitude. They're a little different. So you can have a prayer of praise. Sometimes prayer is just getting quiet, nothing else. No expectation, just to be. And I think some people in supplication end up being in what we call victim consciousness. And when we move to a more expanded consciousness and recognizing that it's putting us into the realization, right? Not just the recognition, but the realization of oneness, that shifts things. Then we start to declare and decree. We start to step into what we believe to be principles of truth. And when that starts to happen, right, that's when I get all excited, because prayer becomes the shapeshifter. Not the shapeshifter of this, the shapeshifter of this, which ends up, right, being demonstrated in the world.
Right.
And it sounds to me like, because when we start getting answers, then I really believe we have, I'll say, transformed, right? Be renewed by the transforming of our minds. We've been transformed such that we could now receive the answer. The answer was probably always there. Couldn't see it before. Couldn't.
It's a lot about showing up,
right?
It's
So I think there's, and I'm sure there's many other types of prayer. I mean, there's prayers with different names, but I think they all just bring us back into resonance, bring us back into harmony, and bring us a sense of peace. And I know peace is very important in the world, right? And and in fact, the phrase that your rallies were peace starts with me, right? And that's, you've hit the nail on the head. Am I peaceful in my home? Am I peaceful with myself? How many things do we say when we look in the mirror? How many things do we say about ourselves that aren't so peaceful? Right. So if we can bring about more peace within ourselves, wow, what would that?
Tell me about it. Yeah.
And it sounds like that's part of what you're trying to usher back into. Not just a Sunday experience. Right.
Yeah, I think so. And because there's a tendency to look for the point at the problems outside and look at the solutions as someone else's responsibility. There's people in all kinds of situations. And in terms of this topic of peace and where to find it and where to begin, and the idea of it starting with me, it's catchy, but everybody has their own unique experience with that. So I'm sure you've got many examples, but if you could give us one specific example or any kind of example of where peace begins with you, where you find peace starts with you in a given circumstance, and how you make that happen.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big question. And I am reminded of a situation. And I think for me, peace is, I talked about that I pray and that I meditate. And those are things that I do, not just in my home, but, in my center on Sundays. And sometimes when I'm in a situation, and I'm going to say it this way, the situation feels a little funky.
You mean the circumstance?
I'm being a little funny here, but sometimes a situation's not comfortable.
Sure.
There's things, maybe people are not trying to hurt me, but it might be aggressive. It might be a situation where people, you can just tell people are agitated.
Something's off.
And sometimes, right, it just takes like 30 seconds just to be in the midst of that and just get quiet. Move within. take a breath, right? When we connect to that breath, it's very important. And then sometimes, right, because that peace it's like weaved into our DNA, and allowing it to just move through me, allow me to access it. And then I start to show up in that situation very differently. And sometimes because I'm showing up differently, the agitation starts to shift. Right? I smile at someone and it's a genuine smile, right? My eyes start to smile and things just start to shift and it's just different. So that's a lot of times how I access that peace.
That's beautiful. That's a whole lot better than just hitting someone. Shea, thank you so much. I feel like feels like we just started, just met, and I'm looking forward to picking up in the future and maybe having you guide us through some prayers or some meditations. Or God exists, and we're all connected, and I believe that a peaceful world is inevitable, and it's going to take us owning that and leading that. But I believe God has willed it. It will come about. And it starts with each one of us. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. It's truly an honor to meet you. Congratulations on your upcoming ordination. Awesome. Thank you. You're beautiful. You look beautiful. You sound beautiful. Your story is amazing. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. Much love to you. Much love to everything that you're doing to bring about peace within individuals and within the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Shea. God bless you.